Welcome to Parish and Community. My special guest today is Liam John, who is the Summer Outreach Coordinator for our ID and Birth Certificate program, as well as, I am sure, many, many other things that we will get to talk about in this conversation. So welcome, Liam.
Thank you.
How did you first get connected to College Church?
So my mom used to volunteer with Winter Inn a lot back in the day, and so I always knew about it. And then in high school, we had like drives and stuff that supported College Church, and so I knew it from that as well. And then when COVID happened, I was looking for a job and saw someone from St. Louis U referred me to the Vista position, and so that's how I got that position as well.
Fantastic. And you've been working on social justice issues a long time then. Does that come from your mom's interest? How did you first get interested?
Yeah, so growing up, like my mom always took us to like St. Vincent de Paul dinners where we would serve folks, or like Ronald McDonald House. So I've always had like that upbringing, and so I just continue to like shape and dedicate myself towards using my privilege towards helping change.
You've been involved in a great many activities uh, at SLU as well as around here. What other kinds of activities are filling your time these days?
I do a lot of work with Campus Kitchen, which is a on-campus pantry that like looks at sustainability and food and how we can be sustainable and how our direct service. So I do that. I like to do some like artwork here and there. Um, and then I just work in the community a lot in St. Louis City, getting involved where I can, where I'm needed.
Are you also still taking classes?
Not this summer. It's just that'd be too much for me, I feel like. So
Sure, sure.
yeah.
Tell me more about Campus Kitchen and the sustainability work. How does that manifest itself?
Yeah, so Campus Kitchen, everything that we get is oftentimes from Trader Joe's, the stuff they can't sell. So if you've heard of imperfect foods,
Mm-hmm.
that's practically what Campus Kitchen does is we get all that food from Trader Joe's, and then we manipulate it somehow to make meals for folks in the community. So like the two high-rise towers in Midtown and um, some other places. And then we partner with local organizations like College Church or other organizations to give what we can so we don't waste any food.
Got it. I know that you have particular interest in housing justice, right? So tell me more about that interest of yours.
Yeah, so also at the beginning of the pandemic, I got involved with a group called Tent Mission STL,
Mm,
which is very like mutual aid, looking at like what people want and what people need to like be themselves and live the life they want to live. And so it's very much just like asking what do you want. And so I got involved in that group, and from there um, I've done work with like shelters, cooling centers,
mm,
um, some like eviction stuff, even though I'm not like the most versed in that. I think that's like a really interesting one because once someone becomes unhoused, like the chances of like getting out of that at like without the trauma that society places on people that are unhoused, it's like so burdensome. And so like evictions are such like a crucial part of that. If people weren't being evicted or like wrongly um, like if their landlords weren't wrongly acting against them, um, I think there would be a lot more justice in the world. And so I don't know, I'm interested in that eviction realm a lot.
mm. What are some of the things that you've encountered through your work with Tent Mission that either surprise you or that you help to explain what the situation is on the ground for folks who may not be all that familiar with it themselves?
Yeah, I think so. I'm my education. So at St. Louis U, I'm a public health major, and so um, the two main things I've learned a lot about are like the stereotypes of drug use is one of them, and so People always like stereotype people who are on the streets or unhoused as like drug users and abusers or whatever they want to title it. Um, and it's just like by placing those stereotypes and placing those like burdens on people, it just like dehumanizes them even more and more, and it creates that cycle. And so what Temp Mission tries to do is just be like very harm reduction and just listen to people. And from that, I feel like we've gotten a lot more trust from people. And so um, it's really interesting from a public health perspective, because we're always talking about like how can you have like drug prevention programs, and like the best way that I found is just like letting people uh, wait until they're ready, or be ready for what they decide is what they want and not what someone is telling them. And that's that difference between like mutual aid and that like savior complex. And so that's the one that I really have learned a lot about, and I have to constantly adjust my mindset to think about that. And then the other one is the need for like more um, medical specific shelters or safe havens in the city. So safe haven is like a place that people feel safe, and like there's not as many barriers, so there's not like a curfew or things along those lines for shelters. So people that don't fit into that very specific like shelter guidelines can feel safe and have a place to stay. And having a healthcare focused one, so like the ER will kick people out of the hospital if they're not sick enough to be admitted to the hospital, because of those stereotypes again, like they're abusing not antibiotics, but like opioids. And so they'll like kick them out. I heard about it last week for a woman, I think she was pregnant, being kicked out of the hospital. And so having a place like a medical respite center where folks can like heal and have shelter and not have to be on the street with like an infection growing on them, I found that that's one of the biggest needs, especially from the people I hear from. So like one of my big things is like listening to people and like hearing what they want. That's a big thing. And so a lot of times they're talking about how they wish they didn't have to be on the street with like a gunshot wound or an infection.
Sure, right, yeah. So specific to some of the programs that we do here, Winter Inn, the ID birth certificate program, what sort of things have you been learning about there?
Yeah. The ID and birth certificate program is really interesting because it's like such a barrier. Like every day I learn about a new state or something on how to apply for it and how to find those like loopholes or whatever it may be. And it's like if someone didn't like learn about those, the chances of someone like who lives on the street trying to find their next meal, trying to find their house to stay in for the night, trying to stay safe, the chances of them being able to get that is like how would anyone expect anyone to do that? And so it's interesting that like there's so many barriers. And also with like I tie identification in a lot with voting as well, and I know we stress that a lot here. And it's just really interesting to see how like class and race play into this identification thing, and how these barriers are meant to be placed on people that can't get them. And so that plays into that race, that class, and that like gerrymandering thing. And we see that in Georgia a lot right now. And Georgia is actually one of the hardest birth certificates to get.
Oh, wow.
So it's really interesting that you need like that birth certificate, and it's so hard to get.
I understand you're actually going to be studying abroad in Rome this fall. What are you looking forward to in that trip?
Yeah. Well, the past year I've done like been pretty immersed, and so even though it's like really interesting and I got involved and I like what I do a lot, it comes with like a lot of fatigue and exhaustion and trauma sometimes from what we experience. And so I'm gonna be sad to like miss all the people I've gotten to know and befriend and all those things, but it'll be good to like disconnect and like recharge and see a different part of the world and how other people act throughout the world.
Yeah. What's going to be part of your program? Are you going to be taking a particular kind of class, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, I'm taking like a food class, so we go across Italy and try foods. Art in Rome, so we just go across Rome and look at the art in the different museums and churches and things like that. And then one is like human rights from a Rome perspective, and so I think that'll be interesting from my like social justice mindset, to see how like that the like mid 90s 1900s like played a part in Italian history and things along those lines.
Well, I hope you prepare a report to give us back when you are finished with that trip. So, oddball question, but I was told to ask you what your favorite coffee shop is or type of coffee.
Yeah, yeah, coffee's like my favorite thing in the world. So, um, I I really like a shot of espresso every once in a while. That's like when I like finish a project or finish a big portion of my life, I'll get like a shot of espresso from Comet Coffee, and so that's probably my favorite coffee shop. And then my favorite coffee is probably like I don't know. I go more towards like the lighter citrus
Hmm.
note.
Hmm.
So like a bright Ethiopian coffee is always good. What did I have recently? Um, I think the one I had most recently was like a Burundian coffee, and that was really good too.
I understand they have good coffee in Rome, so I think you'll do fine.
That's what I hear, but it's like a lot of dark roast, so I don't know if it's going to be up my alley. But it's worth
No.
the branching out of my mindset and trying something new.
Well, good. I'm glad that you're not going to forsake that opportunity while you're there.
Right.
Liam, thank you so much for taking time today.
Yeah. Thank you for having.